Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you guys tonight? You're clapping like you've been in San Diego, just exhausted. Perfect. Welcome, everybody, to the ASU GSV closing reception. My name is McLendon, and I have the dubious honor of being your host this evening. And we have quite an evening planned out for you guys. We not only want to reflect on the past 3 days of presentations and inspiring speeches, the occasional PowerPoint malfunction and subsequent meltdown, but we also want to take the time to celebrate and honor some of the most influential and inspiring minds of our generation. I'm talking about folks like Frank Gehry, right? Yeah. Vanity Fair labeled him the most important architect of our age. He's a visionary artist, continues to defy our expectations of space and design. And I tell you what, it's amazing that we got him, because having Frank Gehry this close to Legoland, it's like a real matches and gasoline type situation, right? Like you imagine him just sneaking over there and suddenly the Chargers have that new stadium they've been whining about. Just building it piece by piece. Oh, there it is. Let's throw some interceptions. Great. We're also here tonight to honor Mitch Kapor and Frida Kapor-Klein. Round of applause for them. Yeah. I mean, here are two people who have dedicated their lives to social causes, you know, to making it better for everyone, to making sure that despite your socio or economic background, you have the same opportunities. And I think that's really important, because in 2016, you turn on the television, it's politicians fighting, you change the channel, it's a real housewife fighting another real housewife. Not even Batman and Superman are getting along anymore. Like, what has become of us? So it's nice to finally see two heroes combine their powers for the greater good, right? Yeah, all right. And finally, our keynote speaker tonight, General McChrystal, former commander of U.S. forces in Afghanistan. He was once called the finest warrior and leader among men on the battlefield that had ever been seen. I mean, if you want to be impressed, I encourage you all to look up some of his accolades that he won over his 34 years in service. But if you want to be humbled, Google his workout routine. Yeah, I did it. He does 1,000 miles a day on the treadmill. It's true. It's a fact. I read it on the internet. Everything's true there. It's true. I saw a sous chef. A sous chef in the back has his abs on loan, and they're just grating the cheese that's going on your entrees. Just shredding all that cheese. He's a beast of a man. I get to sit next to him. But that's just the few people that are coming to this stage tonight. If you look around the room, the story's the same, all right? People that have dedicated their time, their energy, their brain power to going back to their bosses back home and saying, I need 3 days for a summit in San Diego. Yeah, beautiful weather. So that begs the question, what am I doing here? I'm just a comedian, right? What are my accolades? What does Vanity Fair have to say about me? What do my abs look like under this t-shirt? Thank you for that. And I promise you, we'll answer some of those questions over the course of the evening. We'll let the ab thing be a mystery for your sleep later on, sir. All right? So with all that in mind, I want to get back to just a second the Master of Ceremonies impact. And I want to underline that ceremony deal. First of all, can we all agree, turn off our cell phones, pagers, beepers, tablets, anything that makes a noise, a chirp, a beep, a squawk? Sir, we can listen to the Beyonce ringtone later, all right? Put it on airplane mode. Thank you. In addition to that, if we could all keep our table talk to a minimum while the guests are up here talking, that would be really nice. I promise. We'll give you all a chance to eat dinner in just a little while, stretch your legs. But until then, please sit back and enjoy the star of the evening, me, as I introduce the real stars of the evening, you guys. So without further ado, I want to bring on our first presenter, all right? He made it very easy for me, or at least his parents did. Anytime you're hosting, you love alliteration. So please join me in welcoming to the stage, Alan Arkatov.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. On this closing ceremony, it's been an amazing conference and a summit, and a lot of powerful words and imagery have been used at this summit. But there are very few people in history who have had greater impact in how we think about and view society than Frank Gehry. Deborah and Michael have used these summits to demonstrate how creativity and innovation can quantifiably transform and improve education in sustainable ways. And I'm very honored to introduce someone who has inspired the world with his ability to alter perceptions and realities by using his creativity to tap into and literally build out a different way of thinking. We are entering the age of engagement, and visionaries like Frank Gehry and the work of organizations like Turnaround Arts California are changing the educational equation, making sure that children can learn by exploration and evolve as human beings, often under the hardest of circumstances. And while a few might be skeptical of what arts education can do, just know this: the brain science and outcomes are clear, and what Frank has been able to demonstrate through both his architectural work and Turnaround Arts is the power of arts to change how we think and learn. The fact that his buildings are so intuitive to their surroundings and evoke such strong emotions, and that Turnaround Arts has been so successful in such a short period of time, is testament to a simple, crucial constant. Frank Gehry cares, and he cares deeply. Let's watch a short video that looks at the work of Frank Gehry and Turnaround Arts California, and then we'll have Malissa Shriver lead a discussion with Frank about arts education.
I always try to make my buildings look like they're in motion. Studying architecture in the 50s, the way you humanized places was with decoration, moldings and decorative elements that were applied to the building to humanize it. We don't want to do that anymore. We want to be of today. And if you look around our cities, they're cold and sterile and not accessible emotionally. Expressing movement in a way expresses feelings, and it seemed like it could be the humanizing element as an alternative to decoration. In my studies, I've focused on the great Greek sculptures where they express movement with stone. When you look at a great Greek statue, I mean, my favorite one is the Charioteer in Delphi. There's a feeling generated from the work. When you stand beside that thing, it's powerful. It's overwhelmingly powerful. In my work, I really tried to understand how architecture can make an impact, give life, give soul, give it something where people walk in and brings tears to their eyes because they're so happy. With Disney Hall, I did make some moves that are generally in sympathy with the body language. And so as you come down the street, this bow, as you curve, comes into the facade of Disney Hall. It's like a friendly environment, and yet when the orchestra strikes, you know, it's pretty central and powerful. Bilbao had a similarity. The human access to that kind of space has been extraordinary. It's a great asset that makes it a better city, a better place. The process of invention intuitively and understanding where you're going. I'm not making a curve arbitrarily. I'm making something to enhance the experience of the project. That process, when you tap into that or embrace that, the best stuff comes out of that. And there's a freedom to it.
There's things that these kids experience that they may not know is not normal.
We're all one big family, so it just makes me feel mad and sad to see drugs and everything like ruin their life.
There's a lot of worries in those kids. They're not passive. They know what's going on. They're looking for a lifeline.
Turnaround Arts is a school turnaround program that utilizes arts education. as well as arts integrated learning strategies to turn around struggling schools all over the country. And we have 10 of them in California with approximately 6,500 kids.
When I first heard about this program, of course I'm a little leery, but I just feel like there's something about this that's genuine.
What the community would like to see is higher achievement, students coming through the school with a better sense of confidence and direction in life.
It may be the only time they come to LA for some of them. I think it's going to impact them in a really good way.
Many of them have never left their community.
I'm seeing some of these kids really come out of their bubbles, and they're finding a new comfort within themselves.
When schools are struggling and people are suffering, the thing you want to do is bring opportunities to those students.
Before this Turnaround Arts program, I felt confused and didn't know what was going to happen in my future, but now I have more ideas. Frank Gehry, I want you to know that you were like the coolest person. You helped us get to LA, and you believe in us, I think.
Well, what do you got? I think you can do it. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big GSV welcome to Malissa Shriver, the remarkable director of Turnaround Arts California, and Pritzker Prize and now GSV Lifetime Achievement Award winner, Frank Gehry. I'm going to give this to you. Stay.
Wow. Thank you.
Take it away.
Wonderful.
That's wonderful.
Wonderful.
I didn't know I was getting an award. I would have put on a black tie.
It's an added perk. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the work that we're doing, the work that you have been doing for 45 some odd years. And so maybe you could start by just telling this group of people here how you got interested in arts education, particularly in low-performing schools.
I think I figured out it's 50 years ago. I had a small architectural practice, and I don't know why, I got interested in what was going on in the elementary schools because I noticed kids were, after about the 4th grade, seemed to be turning off. And so I went to an arts program they had up at Barnesville Park in LA, and I taught 3rd graders one week, 4th graders the next week, 5th graders the next week, and 6th graders. And it just slowly deteriorated into some kind of pro forma. Something in the education was telling them who they had to be, and it was slowly turning off who they were. And it upset me, and I tried to figure out how to, what should you do with that. And I volunteered to teach or to spend time in some of the elementary schools in the ghetto in LA. And the beginnings, I'd just go for an afternoon. I'd bring a bunch of cardboard paints and stuff and decide, since I was an architect, I decided, well, maybe we should build a city. And so on a dining room table-sized table, we talked about building a city. They were given these boxes and paints. And the kids that were in the corner that weren't interested in anything, watching the other kids painting boxes, slowly came to the table and did something. And they were getting compliments from the kids around them saying, "Oh, that's beautiful. I didn't know you could do that," and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, there was a certain pride. They put them all on the table. We arranged them so they were something like a city. It has city hall, and we talked about all that stuff. I had a transit like the engineers used to use for laying out streets, and I showed them how they do that. And then I took the protractor out of that and showed them that was a protractor, and they could learn to use it, and taught them how to use the protractor. When the city was made and they all loved it and felt related to it, I said, now we have to calculate the area of the buildings. And they started doing it. You know, we showed them how, and they got into it almost seamlessly. There was no question. There was a thing they knew. And then, so I was teaching math. And then when it was all done, we'd say, well, who runs the city? And we were teaching about the mayor and the council and the justice and all that stuff. And pretty soon you were teaching civics. And we did a lot of variations over time. We showed them, on some of the models, we had a lot of trees, and we said if you put a building there and take out a tree, you have to put the tree in the box. You can't just replant it. It takes 10 years to build that tree again. And they'd end up with a box full of trees and they got sort of, what do we do? How do we prevent that? That program worked. My kid sister, who was doing stuff in arts education, she was a musician. I was teaching in elementary school. She was doing similar programs, but with music and the other arts. And we decided to work together, and we did a few projects together. Charles Eames put us into a Venice elementary school, and we were doing fine. We'd go every Wednesday afternoon, and it was for the year. And I would say after 2.5, 3 months, we got kicked out because the teacher was pissed off that we were getting all the attention and she wasn't. And the principal came to us and told us, this ain't gonna work. So we realized then that you couldn't go into the school and force this thing. They had to want you. And that's what Michelle Obama's Turnaround School Arts does. It sets up a way that the schools apply, and then they're selected, and they become part of it. So that's
very good. You know, I've been at this event for 2 days now, and I've heard a lot of talk about personalized learning, student engagement. I think that we're doing a lot of that in our program. And I remember inviting Dr. James Catterall to the office at Gehry Partners, and he was looking at all of your architectural models. And he was saying, isn't it interesting that everybody talks about STEM and how important STEM is, and that people don't even understand that engineering is just applied math. And technology is really applied science. And shouldn't we be talking about arts education as applied creativity? And so I wanted to ask you, in your career as an architect, when you hire architects, and there's been a lot of talk about kind of pathways to careers, what are you looking for in terms of that marriage between kind of applied creativity and applied technology?
Ooh, that's a big one. People come in all sizes, you know, with all different capabilities. But I've been trying to say that architecture has, if you want to build something that's special, the architect has to be responsible. And that hasn't been the culture of architecture. The culture of architecture has been otherwise, where the construction industry has become parental because the architects have sheltered themselves in their legal documents from responsibilities beyond. It's normal because there's a lot of stuff happens in the construction site. But so I've discovered a long time ago that these guys in France were making airplanes on computers without paper. And I thought that would be a great thing to do with buildings, and it could be done. And I started working with the French company, Dassault, to develop software for the construction industry. And we've gotten quite far with it. But it doesn't scale because the forces against it are bigger than us. Mm-hmm. There's so much want to preserve the status quo. And we've proven that with these tools, we can eliminate change orders, or a lot of them. I don't know why they don't want to eliminate change orders. People feel comfortable paying for change orders. Anyway, so we've looked for people that are willing to get involved with that.
So when you're hiring architects, are you looking for engineers, are you looking for artists, or are you looking for both?
A little of each.
A little of each.
Yeah.
And why do you think that arts education, all of the research shows that it has a bigger effect on students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds who ironically get the least arts education delivered in their schools? They have the least access to it. Why do you think that arts education has such, and arts integrated learning strategies have such a profound impact on students who live in poverty?
Well, I think it's personal. I've always felt that you have to touch the person. The person has to be involved. So when I teach architecture, which I do, not at SC, I'm sorry. At Yale, I'm fancy. Anyway, I ask the students the first day I meet them to write their signature. Now, when you write your signature, you do it intuitively. You don't think, usually you don't really think about it. You just write it. And then you put them all on the table, and you look at them, and they're all different. The character of the writing, the aesthetics of the writing, not the words, forget the words. The aesthetics of the way the letters are formed is very personal. Everybody has it. And I tell the students, that's you. So like that, if you trust your intuition and work with that trust, it's the strongest thing you can do. It's very personal, but you get to express who you are, and nobody else is an expert in it, so they may not like it, but they can't, they can say they don't like it, that's fine, but they can't, they can't critique it because they don't, it's you, and that's the strongest thing. And I see that happen with the kids. When you get these kids making something, they take hold of it, and it is them. Theirs is different than the next kid, and they become, and they realize it, and they're told, "Isn't that beautiful? Mm-hmm. I didn't know you could do something that beautiful." And once you get that, it's off to the races. So we've tried this a number of ways over the years, and the city metaphor is always, for us, the easiest one to get into because it has the most components to deal with, and easy to make blocks and paint them and get involved and see the personality. We did it in Washington, D.C. once at the Smithsonian, and we made this table with all the trees on it and said that when you build a city, the trees are, if you take the trees out, you got to put them in a box. You can't just put them back in. So you're going to lose the trees, so you better be careful. And one of the kids turned out to be the rocket scientist Werner von Braun's son. And he took a bunch of cardboard tubes and built the city on stilts and left all the trees. I never forgot that. But I think it's that kind of getting a license to express yourself, and then having others around you look at it and say, wow. There was a little girl in Venice years ago. She was 14. She looked really out of place. She was African American. She looked totally out of place. She sat in the corner, wouldn't do anything for 2 or 3 weeks. And finally I got some box and I started painting it with her. And she got into it. And she put it on the table, and everybody in the room gasped and said, I didn't know you could do that. She became the class artist. Bingo. The kids from Hoopa that we did, we brought them to my office. We brought them to Disney Hall. We brought them to everywhere. One of the boys, Sebastian, was moping around, wouldn't do anything, wouldn't talk to us, and I said, Sebastian, did you learn anything? He said, nope. I said, you mean you'd been better off if you'd have stayed home? He said, yep. So I said, okay, Sebastian, come over here. And I took him over to a table where my guys were working on a model. And I said, just sit here for a minute, I'll come back and get you. I left him there for 20 minutes. I came back, and he was cutting cardboard with the guys. And he stayed there for an hour. And then he followed me around after that for the rest of the afternoon. And when anybody asked him what he was doing, he said, I'm working for Frank.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't take much, but I think theory is not the answer. I think it's just personal feelings. And I think when Malissa and I go into the classroom with these kids, we don't have a theory. We just play it as it goes, right?
Yeah, and we do a lot of teacher professional development, and I think in kind of the post No Child Left Behind world, where there was the very strict narrowing of the curriculum, and then double blocking low performing schools. So you have a low performing school and you're going to double down on what's not working, which to me just seems like the definition of dysfunction. But I think that the whole culture was very much about disrespect. And when you're talking about Sebastian and many of the students that we work with, and the teachers for that matter, and the principals, many of these folks have been working so hard with a policy that is crippling them, and they feel disrespected. And I remember when we did that interview for our local NPR affiliate recently, and I said, Frank, I'm gonna talk about you on this interview, and Frank said, yeah, tell him a little love goes a long way. And I thought, it's so simple. Everybody talks about student engagement now. And I don't even think most people, when you talk about student engagement, are thinking about deeper learning and cognition and what engages a student. And to your point, giving them something to do, to make, having a chance, whether they're a harpist or a dancer or an actor or an architect, to give them a chance, give them a broad curricular offering Every private school teaches this. Every wealthy public school teaches arts education. It's poor schools who don't get it.
If you want to really see arts education on a large scale, successful, I mean, it's not safe to go there now, but it's Venezuela.
Yeah, that's true.
Gustavo Dudamel, the LA conductor, started in that program, El Sistema, when he was 4 years old, and he's now graduated to be the great conductor. I've been to the school several times and watched the kids. Because it's a socialist country, and I'm not saying we should go socialist, but everybody, they include everybody. So rich kids, poor kids, mentally disabled, physically disabled, are all playing in this orchestra. And it's beautiful to watch. And you see little 4-year-olds with a violin sitting on a chair with their legs stuck out here, and they're doing Tchaikovsky. So guess what? That system has 700,000 kids in the program in Venezuela. It's embarrassing. If they can do it, we got to be able to do it, right?
I agree. Well, I think when we talk about how we approach low-performing schools, student engagement is key. Personalized learning, which is a big hot topic at this conference and many others. You know, like you said, it's personal. If you can make it personal for a student, it seems to me that that ignites the engagement piece, and the sky is the limit, you know, and you got the effects for the low-performing students. They stay in school longer, their test scores are better, attendance is up, enrollment is up, discipline goes down. So, I mean, all the indicators show it's rather successful. And it doesn't seem like this is new, because I'm old and I went to public school in California and this was always taught. So maybe sometimes with the advent of digital innovation and kind of going back to a broad curricular offering, we could make a real change in the way, you know, governments assess low-performing schools and address their needs.
Yeah, well, since General McChrystal is here, I'll talk about the Army a little bit.
Yay.
I experienced the Army. I was in 3rd Infantry Division, 3rd Army at Fort Benning a long time ago. And even within the rigid training that we went through, there was an opening to be personal. And that was interesting. I don't know if that still exists. I hope it does.
Yeah, we'll have to find out. We could ask the general. He's here. Well, do you want to say anything else, Frank, about how you feel about education, where it's going, where we've been, what you're looking forward to?
Well, I think there are over 100 schools in California that are in the category of elementary schools that do not graduate 50%, at least 50% of the students, right?
About 100, it's a little less than 100 schools account for almost 50% of the dropouts in California.
And the prison system uses those statistics to prepare the prisons, which is very cynical, but kind of a reality, and that's horrible to contemplate. But and the system of the turnaround schools, for $30 million, you could do all the schools. So we've
probably a lot less.
A lot less. So we've worked on 10 at pretty basic numbers, right?
Yeah.
Under $1 million, I think.
Yeah, well, the SIG schools, I think Turnaround Arts was started initially with SIG money to see if we could outperform the standard SIG schools. SIG is just an acronym that stands for School Improvement Grants, which were federal grants in the range of $6 million given to schools over the course of 3 years. And we outperformed those schools by more than twice with a fraction of the money. And it tells me that it's not a money problem. It's an engagement problem and a respect problem and narrow curriculum. I just don't think it's offering enough to our kids.
And it's simple, and it really works.
Yeah.
And everybody's trying all kinds of sophisticated systems, and some of them really don't work, so.
So
let's get on with it.
So we're at the end of our time. Is there one last thing you'd like to say in parting tonight, Frank?
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh yeah, okay.